The relationship with Dean ends in 1956. The partnership ends in 1956.
10 years to the day.
To the day. To the day.
Dean Martin spoke the truth about Jerry Lewis, and it came down to 6 chilling words that changed everything. When Jerry Lewis died in 2017, his estate was worth around $50 million. But
you were still incredibly popular on stage together. Could have continued on. But you guys don't see each other again for 20 years.
20 years.
Until the MDA telethon in 1976.
Right.
How'd that happen?
That was Frank. Frank took care of that.
Sinatra.
Yeah.
But what shocked people wasn't the money, it was who got cut out. His will named all 6 of his sons, Gary, Ronald, Anthony, Christopher, Scott, and Joseph, and left them absolutely nothing. Not a dollar, not a family keepsake, not even a photograph. And the wild part, in the legal document, Jerry used the word intentionally on twice. He wanted zero confusion about what he was doing. That wasn't some accident or paperwork slip, that was deliberate. Joseph had already passed years before, dying at 45, living alone in a modest Utah apartment. Before that, he reportedly sent his father letter after letter trying to reach him. Every single one came back unopened. That paints a picture the public never saw. To the world, Jerry Lewis was the lovable comedy giant. The man who made millions laugh and helped raise billions for sick children. That was the image, but behind the spotlight, another story may have been playing out, and one man saw it up close before anyone else did. That man was Dean Martin, his partner for a decade, the man who stood beside him while they built one of the biggest acts in entertainment history. Together they were unstoppable, until Dean suddenly walked away. No big explanation, no public meltdown, just gone. But in 1956, Dean reportedly said 6 words that said it all, and then never opened that door again. Those 6 words lead into a story way bigger than a breakup between performers.
He thought it was about time we stopped this nonsense. I introduced Frank, brought him on, sweet. He read a beautiful letter from one of his grandchildren. I loved that. And then I said something to Frank about, why is it that whenever we're together, I have a feeling you're doing something I don't know about? And right on the tail of that statement, he said, let me interrupt you, and let me just bring out a friend of mine I brought over. Will you send my friend out here? And out walks Dean.
This was 2 men, 1 stage, 1 partnership that looked untouchable, and somehow cracked apart. If you don't know Martin and Lewis, here's the deal. And for about 8 years, in the late 40s and early 50s, they ran the game. They weren't just popular, they were massive. 16 films, a hit national TV show, nightclubs packed before dates were even announced. And Dean Martin, he brought cool before cool had a name. Italian-American kid from Ohio, smooth voice, calm swagger, effortless charm. The kind of guy who walked in and changed the whole room's energy. He was already grinding the club circuit when fate linked him up with Jerry, and that's where the real story starts. Good enough to make a living, but not yet famous enough to make history. That was the setup before everything exploded. Jerry Lewis was the wild comic force, the unpredictable one. Born in Newark, New Jersey, to 2 vaudeville performers who were often on the road, he grew up chasing attention in rooms where people came and went, and he learned something early. If you could make people laugh, they might stay a little longer. That lesson stuck deep. It didn't just shape his comedy, it shaped his whole way of moving through life. Making people laugh became survival, became power, became everything. Then came 1946 in an Atlantic City club, and pure accident turned into legend. The club owner reportedly told Dean and Jerry they'd be out of work unless they figured something out fast. So Dean started singing, cool and smooth as ever, and Jerry stormed into the act in a busboy uniform, causing total chaos, interrupting, clowning, grabbing every eye in the room. It was madness, and the crowd loved it. They laughed till they couldn't breathe, and right there something clicked. After that, they moved crazy fast. Within a year, a raid.
And I just looked up to heaven and said, Dear God, give me something to say. And I looked at him, I said, you working? So it was a good start.
A radio show. 2 years later, television. 3 years in, Paramount Pictures. It looked effortless from the outside, like 2 guys riding magic. But behind the shine, pressure was building in ways most people never saw. Here's what people miss about comedy duos. Somebody usually carries weight behind the curtain, and somebody often gets the bigger spotlight. And those 2 things don't always line up. That's where cracks can start. By 1950, they were pulling in $15,000 a week from radio alone. Their Paramount movies were bringing in around $20 million each. Then came that giant NBC television deal in 1953. A reported $35 million, huge money for that era. They were everywhere. Magazine covers, screaming crowds, sold-out rooms, women tossing hotel keys in every city. Total superstardom. But look closer at the headlines, and a pattern starts jumping out. Again and again, it was Jerry Lewis, the genius, Jerry Lewis, the comic sensation, the reason audiences came, and Dean, too. Often he was framed as the side piece. Jerry Lewis and his singer. That line showed up so much it stopped sounding casual and started sounding like a label. Dean noticed all of it, and he wasn't the type to blow up in public. He moved quiet. He watched, he absorbed, he made mental notes, and what he was seeing was bigger than bad press, and because Jerry wasn't just starring in the act, he was increasingly controlling the material side of it too, and that changed everything. Jerry Lewis wasn't just performing in the act, he was
it seems like we haven't seen each other for 20 years.
Well, you know, there was all those rumors about our breaking up, and then when I started the show and you weren't here, I believed it.
He was increasingly steering it. He thought about structure, controlled the pacing of their nightclub sets, and had a hand in how the whole machine ran. As the fame got bigger, so did what Jerry seemed to see as his territory. By the early 1950s, he was positioning himself as the creative engine behind their films, not just acting in them, but shaping them. Every scene, every line, every camera angle, he reportedly had opinions on all of it. Directors often worked around him because arguing took more energy than giving in. That says a lot. Then came a move that raised serious eyebrows. In early 1954, Jerry fired their head writers, Ed Simmons and Norman Lear. Two guys whose job was to make both stars shine. Their work wasn't just jokes, it was balance. They helped make sure Dean had sharp material, strong beats, and a real place in the comedy. And Jerry made that move on his own. No real discussion, no warning to Dean, no asking around, just done. Norman Lear would later become a television legend, but that's another story. The bigger point, the people helping protect Dean's weight in the act were suddenly gone, and the man who made that call reportedly didn't even think to mention it. That tells you where things may have been heading. Because when one partner starts making solo moves inside a duo, that's not small. Then came a moment many saw as symbolic, the day Dean looked almost erased. In 1954, Look magazine ran a big feature on Martin and Lewis during a film shoot. Huge spread, the kind of glossy coverage stars lived for. America was watching, and front and center, Jerry...
He drinks a lot, this kid.
So you working?
I work 6 weeks a year at the Megum.
The Megum?
And 6 days I do a roast.
Enter Jerry Lewis, big expressions, elastic face, filling the frame exactly the way audiences loved. But Dean Martin, nowhere, not in the background, not cropped in, not off to the side, just absent. When Dean walked into the dressing room, Jerry was reportedly already flipping through the magazine, laughing. He said, "Dean, you got to see this. They made me look like a giant." And in a way, he was right. He did look giant, because nobody else was in the picture beside him. Dean looked at the page, and from what people around them later claimed, the reaction wasn't amusement, no laugh, no joke, just a look people didn't forget. Because maybe that wasn't just a magazine spread. Maybe that was a preview of what Dean feared was happening in real time, him fading out while Jerry took center stage. And that tension, it was getting louder. What made that moment hit so hard wasn't the magazine itself. Magazines make choices every day. Covers get edited, photos get cut, headlines get spun. That part wasn't the shock. What made it heavy was Jerry's reaction. The laugh, the excitement, the total lack of awareness that Dean was staring at a spread where he didn't even exist. And that's important, because this wasn't about cruelty. Cruelty suggests intention. This felt like something colder in a different way, being overlooked so completely your absence doesn't even register. That may have been the real wound. Dean Martin, by many accounts, may have realized in that moment his partner wasn't really seeing him anymore. And that kind of break? That's hard to patch up. A partnership can survive ego clashes, creative fights, uneven credit, brutal schedules, all that can be worked through. But when you...
I'm over here.
No, I had to come in because I had to, I had to go, and this was the closest place.
You always have to go.
I always drink,
through, but when you feel invisible to the person beside you, that cuts deeper. Somewhere around 1954, in front of that 2-page spread, Dean may have reached that point, and from there something shifted. He still had 3 more films left on contract, so he started counting down. 10 months left. The last film they made together was Hollywood or Bust, produced in spring 1956. And by most accounts it was rough, real rough. By then, Dean and Jerry had reportedly stopped really talking, except when the camera demanded it. No giant public explosions, no screaming matches, no chairs flying. Across sets, just something quieter, and maybe sadder. Silence. They passed messages through director Frank Tashlin instead of speaking directly. Imagine that. 2 men who built an empire together, relaying words through a middleman. They arrived separately, rehearsed separately whenever possible. Performed side by side because contract said they had to, and when the cameras stopped. They drifted to opposite sides of the room. That kind of distance doesn't happen overnight. Jerry Lewis later wrote about that stretch in his memoir decades later. He said, "We continued to perform together, but we weren't really speaking." And he described hoping things might somehow heal, almost like a kid hoping a fairy tale gets a happy ending. But even he seemed to know it probably wouldn't. Dean, true to form, left almost no written record about those months. No memoir unpacking it, no public airing out, no bitter interviews, nothing. And that was Dean's way. When something was over, he didn't put on a show about it. He went quiet. He waited. He let the contract expire. Meanwhile, audiences in Las Vegas, New York, all over the road saw the polished illusion. The same smooth comedy machine, the same laughs, the same magic. But behind...
Let me read this to you, because this is the ending of your book, Dean and Me.
Okay.
This is after Dean died. You said you went to Dean's funeral, and you spoke at Dean's funeral. And after he passed away, you said, "I lost my partner and best friend, the man who made me the man I am today. I think of him with undying respect."
But behind that curtain, something had already cracked, and most people cheering in those crowds had no idea they were watching a partnership in its final fade. To the audience, it all looked untouched. 2 men who seemed to genuinely enjoy each other, tossing lines back and forth, pulling off physical comedy and musical bits like they always had. Smooth, effortless, electric, but nobody in those seats knew the truth. They weren't just watching a comedy act, they may have been watching a performance of something already over, and that takes a special kind of discipline. To show up, night after night, be excellent at something, make people laugh, hit every beat, while privately knowing you're ready to walk away, that's heavy. But before the final curtain dropped, there was one conversation that changed everything. 6 words. It happened on the set of Hollywood or Bust during a rehearsal that had run long. Dean was ready, lines memorized, marks hit, waiting to move on. Then Jerry stopped the scene. He walked across the set, in front of everybody, crew, supporting cast, director, all of them, and reportedly corrected how Dean should deliver his next line. Not as a casual suggestion, as a correction. That kind of moment can carry weight. One grown man publicly instructing another how to do his craft, with an audience watching. Dean looked over at Frank Tashlin. Tashlin didn't step in. Dean did the take the way Jerry wanted, but something may have snapped. Later that same day, according to Jerry Lewis's memoir, Dean found Jerry and said the 6 words he had perhaps been moving toward for years. "You're nothing to me but a $sign. Cold, direct. No theatrics." And those are the words Jerry reportedly remembered well enough to include in a book 50 years later. That kind of memory usually belongs to something that hit hard. And it wasn't a speech. That's what makes it powerful. Dean wasn't delivering some dramatic monologue. He wasn't trying to win an argument. He was stating what he believed was the truth. After years of watching the balance shift, maybe he had come to see himself less as a partner and more as part of a business machine. Valuable while the product worked. And if
That's quite something to say about a guy who you didn't really see much after 1956, but that connection, that stayed with you, clearly. You still thought of him as your best friend.
Oh, God, yes. Oh, yes. He was the nicest, warmest, most genuine, honorable, integral man I'd ever known in my life.
And if that was how he saw it, then maybe once the product stopped working for him, there was nothing underneath holding it together. That's a brutal realization. Jerry's response, as described later, was silence. No comeback, no joke to break tension, just silence. And reportedly, the smile he usually carried went off like a light. That image says plenty. After that, they finished the film, did the publicity, honored the last nightclub engagement, the Copacabana, New York, July 25th, 1956, exactly 10 years from the night they first performed together. 10 years to the day. That doesn't feel random. That feels almost cinematic. And just like that, one of the biggest acts in entertainment history was reaching its final bow. With 6 words hanging over all of it like thunder, the audience gave them a standing ovation. Some people were reportedly crying after that final show. It felt historic, but maybe nobody realized they were seeing an ending, that final. Then it was over. Dean walked out one exit, Jerry left through another. And after that, 20 years of silence. That says everything. Dean Martin went on to become Dean Martin in a whole new way, not half of a duo, but a name that stood on its own. The Rat Pack icon, television star, recording legend. He built a career under his own name and answered to nobody else's vision of what he should be. And when people asked about Jerry, Dean usually gave a sentence or two and kept moving. No public bitterness, no endless revisiting, just distance. Jerry Lewis took a different road. He didn't slow down, he doubled down. Almost immediately after the split, he signed a reported $10 million Paramount deal. Massive money for the time. He directed his own films, shaped his own scripts, pushed to control every piece he could touch. And some of the work hit big.
Why'd you put the bandage on my hands before you put the gloves on?
So when you hit him, you won't break your knuckles.
Why don't you put some on my shoes so I won't wear them out from running away from them?
Now look, Melvin, half the fights are won in the locker room. You gotta wade psychological warfare.
What?
He's just as scared as you are. Act like this is nothing to you. Make him believe you've been a fighter all your
Work
life.
hit big. The Nutty Professor in 1963 was both a critical and commercial success. In Europe, some critics praised him like a genius. French intellectuals wrote about his visual style, that serious attention. But while the public saw brilliance, another reputation was also growing inside the business. Stories reportedly circulated about difficult sets, constant demands, rewrites that disrupted other people's work, and a management style many described as intensely controlling. People talked. Some performers who worked with him later described environments where his approval carried enormous weight, where power in the room often centered around him, and those stories added another layer to the legend. One account often referenced came from Karen Sharp, who worked with him on The Disorderly Orderly in 1964. In later reporting, she described an upsetting professional experience involving an invitation framed around work. She said after she rejected him, she felt isolated during the rest of production, with others keeping distance. That account sparked a lot of discussion years later. And what stands out is how hard it can be for people with less power on a production to push back. That imbalance has been part of many Hollywood stories. Yet, publicly, Jerry Lewis remained celebrated for something very different. The annual Muscular Dystrophy Association telethon, every Labor Day, year after year, a massive humanitarian effort that raised billions over decades for children facing devastating illness. And that's part of what makes the story complicated, because on one side, beloved entertainer, tireless fundraiser, global star. On another,
Then he'll be so scared when you lift up your arm, he'll fall right down.
Yeah?
I wouldn't let anything happen to you, would I?
We'll soon find out.
Go put on the act right now. Go ahead. Listen, Melvin, how long been fighting?
I've been fighting now for about 60 years.
16?
Yeah, it's about 60 years.
16, wait a minute.
16, 14, 15, 16.
16,
Yeah.
oh, sure. How many fights have you had altogether?
Altogether now, when you add them up, I had 101 fights, 101.
Yep.
I win them all, but 100.
Oh, good. Where, let's see, where are you from originally?
on another side, troubling stories, fractured relationships, old wounds that never seemed fully buried, and through all of it, those 6 words Dean said years earlier start sounding even heavier. Like he may have seen something long before the public did. For all the control Jerry Lewis was said to want in his work and life, there was one thing nobody controls and what people remember. And sometimes memory comes back in the darkest moments. Jerry was known as warm and emotional with the children he met through the telethons, visibly moved, deeply invested, returning year after year to that world he had built. But behind all of that, history with Dean Martin was still sitting there, quiet but unfinished. Then tragedy hit. Dean Martin's eldest son, Dino Martin Jr., died in a military aircraft crash on March 21, 1987. He was only 35, and by many accounts, Dino was especially close to Dean. What happened next stunned people. Jerry Lewis reportedly drove to the funeral alone. No announcement, no cameras, no headlines. He entered the church and stood in the back in the shadows through the whole service. Didn't approach Dean, didn't sign the guest book, didn't try to make his presence known. He came, paid respects, and left quietly. That move carried weight because this wasn't a reunion stunt. This wasn't nostalgia. This was grief. And after the service, someone told Dean Jerry had been there the whole time, standing in the dark, making sure he didn't become part of the story. That hit Dean hard. According to Jerry's memoir, Dean called him that night, and when Jerry answered, Dean simply said, "Hey, Jer." 2 words, that's it, but reportedly 30 years seemed to sit inside the silence that followed. Then they talked for over an hour, and both men cried. Imagine that, after decades of distance, old wounds, pride, silence, tears. Dean reportedly told him, "Life's too short, my friend." That may have been the real reconciliation, not the famous 1976 television reunion Frank Sinatra helped stage, where they hugged, laughed, and made millions emotional. That moment was beautiful, sure, but it was also television. 2 masters of performance doing what they did best. The phone call in 1987 felt different, private, unscripted, human, an older man reaching out to the person he once left in anger, because that person quietly stood in the shadows to honor his son. That's powerful. Then, in 1989, Jerry...
Say give you $1,000.
$1,000.
Oh, you know him?
No, I don't know him.
Oh, well, it offered me $1,000. I said,
$1,000 he offered you.
$1,000.
1,000.
Tau.
THOUSAND. 1,000. 1,000. $1,000.
Kid, this is tough. It was $1,000.
$1,000.
$1,000. I said, what I got to do for this money is I'll give it the money if you lay down around 2. Well, I had to turn it down, actually, because I never went that distance before.
Oh, yes, long way to go.
That guy's a professional.
Gee whiz, I can't find a professional.
Well, that wouldn't be fair. He'd realize. See, come on into the dressing room. I got an idea.
Sure.
I tell you one thing, though. The best fight I ever had my whole life was 3 years ago in Port Argonne. But I
Where?
get this guy in Port Argonne.
Port Argonne.
I was Port Argonne. I was Port Argonne. Port Argonne.
Oh, Portland, Oregon.
Jerry reportedly appeared unannounced at Dean's 72nd birthday celebration in Las Vegas, and Dean embraced him and said loud enough for the room to hear, "I love you and I mean it." Not irony, not a joke, straight up love. For 2 men whose friendship had shattered so publicly in rumor and legend, that moment landed big. But time keeps moving. 6 years later, Dean Martin was gone. Jerry Lewis lived another 22 years. He kept working, kept performing, kept showing up in films and on stages deep into his 80s. And when asked about Dean's death, Jerry gave a line that felt stripped of show business. He said he was sad and lonely, and that's how he died. That doesn't sound like someone talking about an old comedy partner. That sounds like a man speaking about a loss he carried. And suddenly those 6 words that once ended everything don't feel like the last word anymore. Because somehow, after all that damage, friendship found its way back. There's something in that final sentence worth really thinking about. A man who spent his life building audiences, filling theaters, film sets, and phone lines with noise, energy, and applause. A man who raised billions through the goodwill of strangers. Describing another man's loneliness almost like a flaw. That hits different, because maybe that's where this story has always pointed. What Dean Martin seemed to know. Dean left no memoir tearing Jerry down, no public campaign, no revenge interviews, no long list of complaints. He said 6 words in 1956, in a room with witnesses, to the one man who needed to hear them. "You're nothing to me but a $sign." And then he went to work. That's it. No drama tour, no trying to win history. Just a man making a decision and walking away. Meanwhile, Jerry Lewis spent decades explaining himself in books, interviews, documentaries, emotional television moments. He even wrote a memoir about Dean and called it a love story. At times, he spoke beautifully about what they had been and what he believed he lost. And that's what makes the contradiction so striking. Because alongside those words of devotion sits another fact people still debate. His sons named in a legal document and intentionally left nothing, every one of them, including Joseph, already gone by the time the will was written.
That wasn't so hard, that was.
No, it wasn't hard.
Well, I got to be with that guy. I'll never forget that night, boy. I got that guy. I get 1, 2, 3, 4. And I thought I had him down that time. And I never shot him. I took out there. And I... Hey!
They've gone.
Was written. A son who had reportedly spent years sending letters returned unopened. That part lingers, because family stories like that don't disappear. And maybe Dean, the one who said almost nothing, had been noticing patterns the whole time. There's a version of this story where Jerry Lewis was deeply complicated. Brilliant, wounded, charismatic, generous in some spaces, but unable at times to extend that same care to people closest to him. And honestly, that version may be the most human one, because people can be gifted and difficult, warm and controlling, loving and damaging. Both things can exist. Maybe Dean saw some of that in 1954, standing over that magazine spread where he'd been erased. Maybe he saw enough, and maybe he made the move many people struggle to make. He named what he saw, once, clearly, and left That takes nerve, because the question this story keeps throwing back at us is bigger than old Hollywood. It's personal. When someone shows you who they are, not in one dramatic meltdown, but in ordinary decisions, repeated over time, when nobody's watching, how long does it take to believe them? Dean Martin may have had his answer after 10 years. Jerry Lewis's sons may have spent a lifetime wrestling with theirs. So was Dean right to leave and say nothing? Or did his silence allow too much to go unchallenged? That's the question, and I want to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was Dean right, or should he have spoken out more? And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Hollywood's most complicated partnerships, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who loves old Hollywood stories, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one.